Start.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you everyone for being here for our presentation. I want to start with an example. In 1800 something, 69 or something, there was a biochemist called Kekulé. He dreamt one summer about a snake twirling circles. That dream eventually led to the inspiration or the discovery of the benzene molecule shape. As you can see, our study or our model is about dreaming about and creativity. So Kekule's discovery was a dream that actually led to this creative thinking that may have given him this Nobel Prize, because he thought about the discovery of the form of the benzene molecule. While not every one of us may get like a Nobel Prize for a dream that we may have had, likely maybe 0.0% of us, about 7 to 8% of people do experience dreams in which that they get insight or some creative knowledge about. So this is what we'd like to model today. First of all, I'm going to do the introduction. Next, we are going to just explain the mechanisms of dreaming and creativity. Based on that, we'll explain our proposed network model. And after that, we'll simulate a few situations. And afterwards, we did do an analysis and evaluation, and then we're going to do the discussion. First of all, dreaming and creativity. I'm not going to go over this for too long, but the basics are that dreaming can be seen as an internal simulation or internal mental simulation, where there are hyper-associative characteristics, which is the basis for associative thinking. So let's say remote neurons in the brain it's easier for remote neurons in the brain to combine or associate themselves with each other or link together. Creativity is quite a broad process, but it actually is also the basis of creativity in our study or in our model is also actually seen as a form of creative thinking or making associations, because they may have similar brain and cognitive processes. For instance, an increased concentration in the striatal pathway of the brain may facilitate cognitive flexibility and therefore also exploration, which is reflective of associative thinking. And this concentration increases in the brain during dreaming, actually. So that's where one link is. The other link is that during wakefulness, certain frontal areas may have an inhibitory effect on this associative aspect. But we've found that some studies have alluded to the fact that these frontal regions may be repressed during dreaming. So therefore, this repression effect that the frontal regions have on these neurons in the brain is weaker, and therefore facilitates the associative effect. And prior experiences, of course, the traces you have in your memories may then also be used or could be strengthened by the representations of the things you dream of. Being that as a basis, we created we created our model. But I first have like the combination functions we used, which are the allogistic functions for most base states, and a few base states, actually all states except the states using Hebbian learning, which are the W states. And the step one's function is used to indicate periods in time for activation. I'll start with the base layer. What you see here are PB1 and PB2. These on the left here, these are all, except the DA, are all context states. So the PB1 I'll also provide you with a narrative, by the way. because the situation is about someone that has a problem in their work life where they would like to, or like imagine this, that this person has a problem in their work life, that they need to like have create an idea for solving a problem about helping minors on the internet for safe internet behavior. Let's say that's their job. In the first situation, she's confronted, or PB1, she's confronted with this problem, but doesn't know how to, doesn't have an idea about what her idea is. The second one is in another period of time where she's confronted again. So what you see here, this is the sleep state. This is the waking state, which is mostly used as a constant to repress. And this is the dopamine concentration. So what happens is first the PB1 is activated, the first problem is activated, but then the person falls into sleep state. Because one day she's going to dream. This sleep state therefore gets incoming, connects with the sensory representation of this first. This is mostly used as just the starting position. What is interesting is, I'll only explain like the first thing you see here. So what's interesting is in dreams, you may have choices for your narrative. It goes a certain direction, or it follows a certain sequence, but within that sequence, you might have to make choices which you might want to present. So what we did here is present this model with two choices, two preparation states for within one dream stadium. That is either, for example, she sees a building, she's either going to enter the building or she's not going to enter the building. The negative associations within these two preparation states actually allude to the choice that someone has to make, because if they're both active, there's not going to be any representation because both are going to be made. So for the simplicity of the model, we allowed this person to choose one of these choices. And this choice is amplified by this evaluation loop with a sensory representation state for this. I'm opening the apartment door because somehow there's a personal bias for wanting to open that door. So this is a positive evaluative loop. And these activation, these these are only able to be activated because the sleep state represses the frontal regions, as you can see here. And the sleep state also causes an amplification for the dopamine concentration in the brain. So this actually just follows this choice pathways because of these amplification of activity for this representation, which leads to the dream state, and it just repeats for the narrative. And yeah, that's the evaluation. On this first order, we have, I'm going to show the full model in a bit. We have the thresholds of the preparation states, which means that as dopamine increases, it actually reduces or lowers the threshold of activation, so increases the excitability of the preparation states, so that they can be more activated, which implies the associative thinking, combined with the fact that the activation of the repression effect of the frontal regions is lower. Next, we have these W states. The base states that were chosen can be like strengthened through Hebbian learning. That is the principle of that. And next we have the second order reification for the speed factors, which indicates acceleration or the learning rate of the W states. And as you see here, we have I didn't say this before, we have a dream recall. That's either someone is going to remember the dream or is not going to remember the dream, which is directly influences the reification for persistence of the W states, which indicates how well the learned connections are staying in the brain. And this is the total model. It's a bit much, perhaps, but as you can see, what is specifically important is the fact that the threshold state here lowers the thresholds of the chosen preparation states, and that the W states amplify or strengthen the learned connections. Yeah, that is this for our model. And next, Dominique is going to do the simulation. If you have anything to add, just do that. But then we're going to start.
Yeah. So we here's our simulations. Just to make it more clear, we're going to show you those context state first, because there's a lot of lines. So we thought we'd just give you parts of it first. So the first line part you see is the problem state 1, where she firstly thinks about her problem. Then the second one is the sleep state, where she has the dream. And then lastly, it's the part where she thinks about her problem again. Yes. So here's the dopamine and prefrontal cortex, or like the prefrontal area sequence that is happening. So as you can see, like during her waking life part, the dopamine, the striatal dopamine is kind of low. There is a baseline. And then there's quite some suppression from the prefrontal cortex. It's very high. And the threshold is like somewhere in the midway. But during her dream state, the striatal dopamine goes up. And because of that, the threshold lowers. And this also, like, not vice versa, but the prefrontal areas are actually less inhibitory as they are in waking life. And as she goes out of the dream, everything like goes back to normal with their regular suppression and thresholds. So as you can see here, like during her first waking life, when she thinks about the problem for the first time, the entire process isn't able to start. Like it sort of decides to go, but it's not really, it doesn't have enough associative power to continue on and actually find a solution within that. But during her dream state, as the threshold has lowered and there's less inhibitory power by the frontal areas, the process is actually able to start. So as you can see, there's a lot of lines. The chosen PS states, so the choices that she makes, decides to go up. And they reach 1. And as they go up, they also take that value of association with them to the SRS dream state. For the not chosen PS states, they are sort of considered still. It's not like a full 0-1, but she decides to not go with those. So they go back down again quite quickly. And also the actual happy and learning of it, the associations that are made, go up during the dream. And as you can see, enough association is made to actually take it with her in her waking life. It doesn't just extinguish after the dream is gone. And because these W states stay up and these associations are made and they're strong enough, she's actually able to go through this entire associative process again, but while she's awake. And so even though the thresholds are back to normal and the frontal areas are back to their regular level of inhibiting these associative processes, the associations made during the dream are strong enough that that doesn't matter anymore. And she's still able to make those associations in her waking life. And with that, she finds the solution again while she's awake. So the like striped line you see is her finding a solution, which she does do during the dream and then is able to do again during her waking life for her job, because those associations made during the night or during the dream are so strong.
This actually says no dream recall. we missed a no.
So here's the same situation again, but when she doesn't remember her dream. So she did have the dream, but she just doesn't have any recall of it. So as you can see, like during the dream, the same thing happens where she finds the solution, all the associations go up, but she doesn't remember it. So as opposed to the other one, the W states and the learning don't stay high. And because they're not high enough, they don't counteract against the higher threshold and inhibitory power of the frontal areas. So they can't really compete with those levels. And so they extinguish, and a solution is not found this time during her waking life. So the striped line, which is the solution again, goes up during the dream, but in her waking life, it's almost barely there. Because she doesn't have any recall of the dream.
Yeah, we did a short analysis of base states, and it seemed that actually value-wise, both at a stationary level of the PS states, which are the most important states, and the Hebbian learning were actually pretty all right. Yeah. And based on the evaluation that we took numbers from and based them off the theory that we had, there should be an increase there and a decrease there, and we actually came to pretty good simulation. So we could like improve the model by using this the evaluation tuning, and we tuned, by the way, all the incoming connections from the PS, the important all the PS,
the chosen states.
Yes, so there were 28 parameters, and this model still looks about the same as we did before and what we expected. That was the evaluation of that. I think we are missing one line.
I think we deleted one too many slides.
We deleted our discussion, apparently.
But we had some discussion points about things that could be done in next research that we wanted to do, but like due to time constraints and stuff, we were not able to put in everything we wanted to. So there are a few like other brain areas that might be connected to this whole dreaming system, like the petunias has been mentioned a bunch of times. There's also, of course, other forms of creativity, music, arts, other ways of thinking that can be looked at with this. There were also effects of possible sleep stages. So looking at the difference between like REM of dreaming during REM sleep, non-REM sleep, or slow wave sleep. And there were also other like neuromodulatory systems, like the besides dopamine, like noradrenaline and serotonin. And we chose to do dopamine because of the like amount of research that has been done on this, and we could easily, or more easily, in the time we had, do dopamine. But like those other ones could also be looked at, which would be very interesting. All in all, like this is a very, I think, very nice maybe starting model to have as like a basis, and maybe other people or ourselves can build up on this and use it for future research.